And hello everyone. I am so glad to be back with you guys again. I took over 2 weeks off to recover from surgery. We're not going to get into those details. They're a little bit gross, and I don't think you guys want to hear that anyway. But I am back. I'm able to speak okay. I want to discuss something that Mike Lee and I were talking about. And as you guys well know, the newer Canon printers that can be refilled, in other words, something like the Pro-300, the Pro-200. Yeah, the cartridges for the 300 are identical to the Pro-10 cartridges, so you can refill those the same way you do the Pro-10 ones by dribbling ink into the exit port until they reach 32 grams. That means they are full. But the Pro-200 cartridges, even though the body shape is identical to the CLI-42 cartridges, they are opaque. So you really cannot tell how well your sponge is absorbing that ink, especially if you let it go till empty. And you have to let it go to empty the first time. You know why? Because there is no resetter. So you have to disable ink monitoring. And the only way to do that is to let it go empty. Well, what I would do is to prematurely modify that cartridge. The ball has to be removed the same exact way as the CLI-42s. You drill out the hole, you put a plug in it. At this point, you would top it off. That means that you're topping it off before it reaches low. And there's no optical prism on these new cartridges. So the low warning, I think, is triggered by software and a determination as to how much ink has passed through the actual printhead for that particular channel. And it will determine that, it's low, meaning the liquid chamber is empty, and now you're going to withdraw ink without replenishing it to the sponge. That's not good. You don't want to do that if you ever plan to refill. So prematurely modify your cartridges and fill them. Now, another option is simply to use CLI-42 cartridges that you either have already modified yourself or bought them already pre-modified from the link on my descriptions below. Okay, so that's another option. Well, you still have to disable ink monitoring, but at least you can have a full cartridge before you get that low warning. That's the whole idea, to never allow that sponge to start losing ink with nothing to replenish it. And that is bad because then it actually affects the reabsorption of the ink as you fill that liquid chamber. It's very tricky. Remember, you're not supposed to even do this. But yet we can do that. So you got to make sure that you follow certain practices to make this work efficiently and at least consistently for you, because otherwise you're going to have problems. So now we have, say, a Pro-300 or a Pro-200 on which you have disabled all the channels. Well, psychologically, that can drive you nuts because you have no clue visually that you have ink in your cartridges, other than maybe removing them and looking at them once you switch over to those, translucent cartridges. The Pro-10, absolutely, you're running blind at that point. You have no clue. Well, on an EPSON, say, XP15000, I have disabled ink monitoring on mine. How? By installing the ink chip firmware, which then renders it chipless. The difference here is, and again, it's all psychological. You see that the ink levels are full all the time. Well, neither one of those conditions is accurate. Whether it shows nothing, but there's ink in those cartridges, or whether it shows full and you have no idea if there's ink on those cartridges or not. So either one is just as psychologically bad for you mentally. So what you have to do is religiously keep those cartridges topped off, okay? That's the only thing that I can provide you as a suggestion. If you have an EPSON printer that can be rendered chipless, at least the P800, the P600, and the P400, I believe, can be rendered chipless, as well as XP type printers and other all-in-ones can be rendered chipless. Not so with the P900 or the P700. So far, nothing has come across that will allow us to use third-party products. But at least with those printers, you have the indication of actually having ink. It just looks full all the time. Well, is that any different than just simply not showing anything? Since you have no clue whether your cartridges have ink or not, especially those printers with opaque cartridges. Okay, think about that. So to me, it's the same thing. We were having this debate back and forth. Which is better? Oh, I want chipless because I can see full colors on my indicators. Well, that means nothing because it will show full and yet you could be empty. But on the other two families of printers, the ones that you either disable ink monitoring, and you can do that here as well. I don't want to do that. I want to use my chips. But, you know, what's the difference? Shows nothing or shows full? You still don't know physically how much ink you have unless you either weigh the cartridges if they are opaque or view if they are translucent, or if you are using refillable cartridges for those particular EPSON printers that can be rendered chipless. It's an interesting thought, okay? And you guys need to consider that. EPSON printers that can be rendered chipless, you will always have full ink indication. Makes you feel good. Really means nothing. Canon printers, they have to be rendered with the ink levels disabled. Oh, that's scary, isn't it? It shows nothing. But again, it's the same thing. You just have to maintain your cartridges full. I hope that wasn't too confusing. But again, both situations, even though they're drastically different, at least visually, it's the same thing. This is showing you that there's zero, nothing. But I know I filled that cartridge. The EPSON one that's chipless shows me that it is full. And in fact, it could be almost empty, for all you know. All right, I think that's about all I'm going to discuss on this subject. If you guys are interested in rendering your EPSON printer chipless, follow my links to inkchip.net on my descriptions. They have a list of all of the models of EPSON printers that are actually able to be rendered chipless. And just consider doing that. Again, if you're using refillables, or even if you're using a printer that does not really have an auto reset option, no problem. You don't even have to have chips on your cartridges. Imagine that. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And as always, happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.